Atlanta. Southside shows for a couple dollars, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are live once again. It's another Monday Night Brew Party, another very special edition of the Brew Party podcast, episode number 47. I'm joined by Joey Held, the editor of the Crisp Bounce Pass newsletter. Joey, how you doing, man?
I am doing wonderful. We made it through another Monday, and
Yeah.
we're ready for our brews.
We're ready for the brews. I actually have a mixed drink this time because I totally forgot to go get beers, but we're here. Thank you so much for being here with me, man. I'm excited to jump into this little NBA talk for you. So first, let's start with Crisp Bounce Pass. So you're the editor, is that correct?
Yeah, editor, creator, however you want to frame it. This was one of my many quarantine projects. I've written about basketball in the NBA for over a decade now, and last summer I was, during the 4-month break we had between the NBA season getting postponed and then continuing in the bubble, I was reading stuff and I'm just like, you know what? There's so much analysis on box scores, on teams' performance on the court and all that, but there's so many interesting storylines in basketball outside of that as well. And so I wanted this to be a little more on the lighter side of basketball. There's definitely a lot of pop culture crossover as well. And decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to start this. And the newsletter was a format. I'm subscribed to tons of newsletters. I'm sure you have several popping up in your inbox too. And I love the ones that actually give me something to read. There's many where I feel like I'm being sold to a lot of the times. And I didn't want to do something like that. I just wanted one that, even if you're not a huge basketball fan, I want you to take something away from it and have a great time reading it. So there's issues have looked at the strangest basketball cards that have ever been released. One of my favorites is Wesley Person, a veteran journeyman guard around the league who just randomly had a card where he's underwater making a pass. He's like in a pool making a pass. I don't understand it. He's in his full jersey, but whatever works for it. It's great. And then a more recent issue looked at some of the best cameos from NBA players in movies. There are logo deep dives into the branding, so you can take a team like the Memphis Grizzlies. How did they get from, kind of a friendly little grizzly bear and the teal of their Vancouver? How did they get to the more aggressive Memphis Grizzly today? And I always think those are some of the older logos are just so fantastic. I still will vouch. Anyone listening, please go look at the Milwaukee Bucks original logo. It looks like a relic of the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer special with the claymation and everything, and it's just so
with the Bucks. Is it a sweater or is it a jersey? I remember that
sweater. Yes, it's so good. There's also the Pistons robot logo. I'm a big fan of too, where it looks like the Tin Man playing basketball, and I am all for it. Let's bring back these 1940s and 50s logos.
Well, the Grizzlies now, they're doing those throwback of the Vancouver ones, and they're just so sick. That's one of my favorite logos of all time is the old Vancouver Grizzlies logos. But one of your articles that I liked a lot, it was the Larry David, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Muggsy Bogues cameo. That one was awesome. I love Curb. It's one of my favorite shows of all time. So I loved reading that little piece.
Yeah, there's always NBA cameos in TV shows as well. And I think the ones on Curb, it's just been Muggsy and Shaq over the 2 years. So I, put those two standing next to each other. I know there's a Shaq next to Earl Boykins photo that's pretty funny. So imagine a 4 inches shorter than that. And both of those guys can act. Like Shaq's a good actor and Muggsy is terrific. I think his comedic timing is fantastic. And sometimes you'll get an athlete in a show and it's just kind of like, why are you here? Like you're literally just kind of, I know why you're here. You're an NBA athlete and that helps bring in fans, but like they don't have the acting chops, which is fine. Like they're fantastic basketball players. They don't need to have all the talent and everything. But then when they can step off the court and give you a solid performance, I think that's even more of a benefit. It's great.
I think LeBron is actually a pretty decent actor. Like I actually liked him in Trainwreck, that movie from a couple years ago. Then obviously he's got Space Jam 2 coming out, but from what I've seen, he's pretty good. It just I could do without the million-hour Instagram stories. But so let's get into a little bit of some NBA talk, kind of what's really going on. I know we were talking before this, just how crazy it's been with COVID. Has there any like specific storylines that you've really been following? I know you said you try to go outside of the box store. Anything super interesting this year that you've been following closely?
I mean, I think just the NBA bubble as a whole was just such a fascinating thing for everyone. You know, this was when you first hear the idea, it's like, hey, we're going to make 4 months of, well, 3 months, I guess. We're going to make most of the teams come into this bubble in the Disney World area, and you're all going to stay here for several months and finish out the season like that. And when I first heard that, I thought there's no way that could work. And yet they successfully pulled it off. And it was really smooth. I thought the whole process went super smoothly. I loved seeing the fans that you could call in from Zoom and participate in it. And actually, a former college professor of mine got into a Heat game. I believe it was a second round game against the Bucks, and she was, she wrote about her experience and said that it was fairly similar to being at a game in the sense of the camaraderie between all the fans, and people are chatting and sharing stories like how long they've been supporting the team, what their family life is like. I think one guy got yelled at by his wife for being in the way, and so he had to go shift locations. But I think the NBA has always been one of the more innovative leagues, and they're willing to try new things. It's not like, hey, this is the way it's always been, we got to stick to it. And I thought that was just a really creative way to do that. And then you'd see guys like Evan Fournier, who was showing the swag bag that the league showed or gave everyone, and him being confused at like some of the different like soaps and stuff that were in there. Just like, I don't know if I'll use this, but that was just a cool behind the scenes kind of peek, and it almost gave more access than I think you'd get in a normal season, because at least from like post-game interviews, players seemed a bit more like, more willing to talk because they're not crowded around a locker with like 25 tape recorders in their faces. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those scrums for reporting for something, but it is not pleasant. Like sometimes you're not even looking at the player, just like holding an arm out and just like trying not to get squished between two other people. So I think having some space to breathe was a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really brought a lot of stars to the forefront, that we didn't see during the season. Maybe not as much, I would say. I think that environment really spoke to how good some of these guys are and how much fans and all of that distraction can really take away from your game. I know the one thing I've really been following is just James Harden is like fat as fuck right now. Like, then there has not been that long of a break in between the bubble and the start of this new regular season. What the hell could he have been doing in these months? I guess we're all quarantining, sitting on our couches, binging Netflix, eating whatever. I guess he was hitting it hard.
I mean, the quarantine 15 is definitely no joke. I feel like I saw a picture of James Harden, though, in like August or September, and he looked trim. He looked like he was hiking a lot or, doing something, and like had the legs guns showing off, like some great calf and quad muscles. But apparently there was some downfall in there. I will say I live in Austin. Houston's about 2.5-3 hours away, and Texas does have some fantastic barbecue. Tex-Mex is obviously a big thing, so I would imagine James probably enjoying that maybe a little too much, but I also can't blame him, because then you're throwing in the sides too. Like beyond the meat, you've got creamed corn, you've got mac and cheese, you've got, if you need your greens, you could have like collard greens, something like that, and then you probably thrown in banana pudding or peach cobbler or something like that to wrap everything up. And I don't think it's possible to eat barbecue to the point of you're just like, this is good, I'm content, and that's it. You have to overeat, and then you eat a little bit more at the very end. And maybe James just did that once too many times.
Maybe a couple strip clubs with some buffets. I know he likes to frequent those as well. But
the lunch specials are great.
Yeah, go get those lemon pepper Lou Williams wings. So you mentioned you're in Austin. Where is your NBA fandom lie then? Are you a Spurs guy? Are you a Houston guy? Are you a Dallas Mavericks fan, or is it completely different?
It's none of the above, actually. It's
No.
I guess I've kind of adopted the Spurs a little bit just because that's the closest team. San Antonio is about an hour away from Austin. Austin's G League affiliate, the formerly Austin Toros and now the Austin Spurs, which just confuses people more when you're talking about the Spurs. They're in Austin, so have been to several of their games. But I grew up in Chicago, so a Chicago Bulls fan.
Nice.
Love watching their scrappy unstoppables this game where I've been shocked that they've even been, flirting with 500 in the first 10 or so games of the season here. I don't know if they'll keep it up, but getting Jim Boylan out of there was maybe the best decision.
I was just about to say, so I'm a Bulls fan as well. It's just like, who knew getting a competent head coach in there was what they needed to compete with these teams. They haven't won a lot, but they're covering the spread. And Zach LaVine is like third in the league in scoring, I believe. I know it is only 10, 11 games into the year, so it's super early. It's a long season. But you have to like what you see so far from these young guys. I think the key for the Bulls is, are you going to be able to keep that young core together? Is anybody going to want to move on or be done? I was a little bit questioning the Patrick Williams pick. I was kind of able to talk myself into it a little bit more after I did some more research, but they take him at 4, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? But it's only up from here, I guess, for how bad they have been for this stretch. So another fun story I saw, I guess it's not really fun because it's due to COVID. But the 76ers, they had to play the Nuggets the other night. They only had 8 players available. Doc Rivers said before the game that Dwight Howard might have to play some point guards. So we'll see how that goes. So like I said, they had a bunch of players out due to COVID contact tracing. So that's not funny, obviously, but their entrance video, which I'm going to try to pull up here really quick. Oops. Right here.
Like I like it.
I know. Oh no. I don't know. That visual was just so funny to me of, let me get this out of here. Just the 8 guys coming out of the tunnel. Obviously, they're ready to play. I don't even remember what the final score of that game was. But do you think this is going to be a trend going farther into the season, that we're going to have to see more teams with very limited availability?
Oh, absolutely. I think the league is trying to negate this with these kind of back-to-back schedulings that they've done, and also by not releasing the full schedule. We only have the first half of the season so far, and so getting that kind of down pat, I think it is a very experiential or experimental type of start to the season. But I think you're going to see more of this. It kind of reminded me of in high school when you'd play the summer league games, where it's like, it's optional if you want to show up. Like, we'd recommend it, but you don't have to. And you'd get like 6 or 7 people maybe to go play like 5 games in a row in a day, and you're just so gassed by the end of it. But you're like, that's what the situation is. We got to go forward and play with it. I don't imagine the NBA would be postponing games. Like, I think if you were kind of on the, if you had someone that was injured, like unrelated to COVID, and was, day to day, I think the league would probably not openly come out and say it, but I think there'd probably be a memo being like, hey, you better get that person able to play, since you're trying to do load management or whatever. But if there's fewer than 8 people, the game would get pushed. So by having 8, the Sixers were just able to make the cut, and that's why that Rockets game got postponed at the start of the season, because the Rockets didn't have enough players to even get to 8. And so I think the league is probably going to be a little less sympathetic for non-COVID related injuries, and people being out for that, and maybe being like, hey, look, you've rested that ankle injury for 4 months. Like, you said it was just a rolled ankle. Like, get on out there.
What's the limitation on a rest day, or just how many healthy scratches do you get to have in the season. So one thing I wanted to go over is some early season surprises so far. So for me, I have two teams in mind. For one, out in the West, it's the Phoenix Suns are 7-3. They're now second in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, they have that extremely young core with Booker, Ayton, and then they add a guy like CP3, which, I mean, good for CP3. Who wouldn't want to play their last few years out in Phoenix or that Scottsdale area? And then the other one is the Magic, are 6-4, and they're fourth in the East, I believe. Obviously, Markelle Fultz is out for the rest of the year with an ACL tear, which sucks. But I don't know if I see them staying in the fourth spot. Like I said, it's only 10 games into the year, so there's a lot of basketball to go. But just seeing those two names kind of jumped out at me. Were there any players, teams, storylines, coaches that kind of have surprised you with their performance so far?
Yeah, the Magic is definitely one of them. And I had just read something that I think it was a Sports Illustrated article where Markelle Fultz, his first 4 seasons in the league, this is assuming he doesn't come back this season from an ACL, he played 113 games. That's not even a season and a half. This man has missed a lot of games due to injury, and he finally looked like he was in a good spot for him and playing well. And so it is always a bummer to see stuff like that. And so I'll be curious to see if the Magic can bounce back from that. It looked like from one game against the Rockets, they got demolished, which I think is kind of to be expected. That first game without your point guard on the floor is always hard to do. I think the Knicks are a surprise as well. Yeah. I expected them to maybe have one win at this point. So the fact that they were at 500 and who knows if they can keep it up. Obviously, both of us being Bulls fans were well familiar with Tom Thibodeau and his play all of your starters 45 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They're going to be gassed in the next month. But
yeah,
I mean,
we'll see how they.
I mean, credit Austin Rivers though on the Knicks. What he's been able to do is pretty impressive. Getting more of an elevated role there, and then Julius Randle's been pretty impressive. And then RJ Barrett, kind of taking that next step. I'm very curious to see like what the Pelicans do this year. How healthy is Zion going to be? Is there going to be a minutes restriction? Actually, really like Stan Van Gundy on the broadcast, so I'm definitely going to miss him calling games, but hopefully he'll be able to bring a winner to New Orleans. So I want to move on to like our way too early NBA title picks. So obviously it's the Lakers are your reigning NBA champions, winning the bubble championship. Do you think there's any team that is really going to compete with them? I mean, not only in the West, but do you see a team out of the East being able to take the Lakers down in a 7-game series?
I mean, no. I think that the closest that could do it, I do think the Clippers could hang with them. The only problem, and I don't remember who said this, but I always think about it, is that the Clippers, when they're playing basketball, look like a group of people that don't like playing basketball. And I think you saw that last year of just like the bubble was the worst thing for them. That break, they came back and it was like, oh, like, do we have to do this again? And it just, they didn't gel well together on the court. If they can keep things together, I think they can certainly give the Lakers a run for their money, but I think the Lakers are far and away the title favorite. And I'd be shocked if anyone is able to knock them off in a 7-game series. We'll probably see one series, maybe like the Blazers last year winning game 1, and everyone's like, oh, look out. And then the Lakers just come back and win 4 in a row. And so I think that's always fun to have that hope for one game, and then it's just immediately crushed.
Well, I was watching the NBA on Christmas, and they trot Marc Gasol out there, and I had to do like, wait, what? Hold on. And then the Clippers have Serge Ibaka, so I'm like, whoa, shit. These moves, I did not pay attention as much as I should have in NBA free agency, I guess. And then Rajon Rondo playing in Atlanta, and he's not wearing number 9 anymore. That's really weird to see. The Hawks have kind of been a surprising team as well. I think Trae Young could potentially be a dark horse MVP candidate, but I think for me, I think you nailed it on the head. I think it's the Clippers. Do you get like a really crafty young Suns team? I know they were undefeated in the bubble this last year. Speaking of the bubble, I guess I'll jump back here real quick. Do you think we see another bubble environment at any point for the NBA, whether it be the playoffs or down the road this season?
I would guess not. I think the NBA is hopeful that by the time the playoffs roll around, there can be some fans coming in, and they can at least recoup some of that revenue, because every professional sports team right now is hemorrhaging money because they
Hmm.
can't invite fans to the games, understandably so. We're seeing it, in the NFL and Major League Baseball allowed a few fans to come in, and kind of stay socially distant. Those are outdoor stadiums for the most part, which it's still probably not the safest thing to be doing. I certainly don't have plans to go to a sporting event live
Absolutely.
anytime soon.
Right.
But I think if we did see one, I think it would be in the playoffs. But I think the NBA is going to hold off on making that announcement until maybe a couple of weeks beforehand, when it's like, oh, maybe we can't have any fans come, and they might do that. But it is very much like a March Madness sort of setup in the bubble there, where it's kind of like you're
Right.
not really the home team, like you're both on neutral courts. And even with playing on your own home court, there's an intrinsic advantage there if you're just used to that court. The courts are all the same regulation size and everything, but they all have little nuances in terms of like depth of field and sight lines and things like that. And you're just used to the friendlier baskets. I think anyone that's played basketball on one court a lot, if you go to another court, you're kind of
Yeah.
like, I don't like this as much. These rims, not great.
Yeah, come see me on my court in my parents' backyard, and then we'll talk to me. Anywhere else, it might be a little different. But I think that's a great point, man. And I like I said earlier, we saw in the bubble these guys probably with those big stadiums, a lot smaller, not even gyms, kind of ballroom or convention room that they just turned into an NBA arena. We're able to see the basket a little bit better. I think that's a great point. But moving back to the title picks, I think we're both on the consensus, the Lakers here. Going to MVP, something I wanted to bring up, very interesting. The betting odds. So Luka Doncic is still the favorite. Open is the favorite. Close behind him is Giannis Antetokounmpo. Do you see any other guys potentially surpassing them? I mean, Luka currently through 8 games this year, averaging 26, 9, and 8, shooting 45% of the field, only 22% from 3, which has definitely got to bump up there a little bit, and then 78% from the free throw line. And if you compare that to Giannis Antetokounmpo, he's played 9 games, 27, 10, and 5, shooting 52%, 26% from 3, and only 62% from the line. We saw early in the year, like one of the first games, he missed I don't know if it was 1 or 2 free throws that they absolutely needed to tie the game. Ended up losing to the Celtics. But those 2 guys, obviously the front runners, actually have their betting odds right here pulled up on my phone. 1 second. So Luka Doncic is currently plus 400. Antetokounmpo is plus 450. Kevin Durant's at plus 800. And then next closest is Joel Embiid at plus 1,000. So I think Kevin Durant at plus 800 could be pretty good value there. But after Luka's performance in the bubble, I mean, 26, 8, and 9 is pretty damn good too.
Yeah, I saw. I don't have the latest odds, so you'll have to give me, because you have not named this person yet. But my boy Nikola Jokic,
plus 1,200.
Plus 1,200. If you watch a Nuggets game, I don't think there's a possession where he's on the floor that doesn't go through him. And if you look at the all the advanced metrics and plus minus and all that good stuff, when he's on the court, they're a very good team. When he's off the court, they're like one of the worst teams in NBA history in terms of efficiency, because he's just so capable of making a tough shot. We saw it in a game against the Mavericks. He had a crazy little step back jumper to force overtime. Nuggets ultimately ended up losing that game to Luka and the Mavericks, but he makes these ridiculous passes where it's like, it almost looks like he's just like, stumbling through these games. Like he's certainly not the most athletic guy, but he just has this big, like lumpy bag of potatoes bodies that he's so deceptively strong. He can back anyone down in the post. And I think this was the last NBA game I saw live, was a Hawks Nuggets game when I was visiting Atlanta, and Jokic had like 30 and 17 or something, and it was the quietest 30 and 17 I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing that's holding him back is he's not flashy.
Right.
But he is such a critical part of the Nuggets, and I think if they can start winning games, they certainly have not done that very well at the beginning, but I think they're kind of still I think Will Barton coming back, they're kind of regaining their footing of like what's everyone's role. And then losing Jeremy Grant, I think, was a huge thing that I think a lot of us thought when that happened. Like, oh, that's probably someone they'll miss, especially since they did not really replace him with anyone. So I think if they can gel together, and if Jamal Murray, speaking of the bubble, can start playing like Bubble Murray, I think they'll start winning games. And Jokic, he could be even better value than Durant.
Right. Well, my favorite part about the Nuggets is they just keep getting these dudes that just fall to them, like Bol, Michael Porter Jr. It's just how many more are they going to get? But the thing for me about Jokic, I think you hit on it really well, is his vision as a passer, being that big. And I think he could be their point guard if they really needed him to, like at 7 foot at his size. He can run the offense. I don't know how well he can really handle the ball. That might be a problem, but as far as them running their offense through him, like he can post up, pass out of it very easily. But his vision for me is probably my favorite part of his game. So your pick is Jokic. I love that. That's awesome value, plus 1,200. And then our rookie of the year. So right now, LaMelo Ball is the only one. He's actually in minus odds here. So he's minus 134 to win the rookie of the year. I think my pick is Tyrese Halliburton from the Kings, who's looks like if you went back and redrafted, he has a case to be number 1 overall, what he's been able to do. Then Anthony Edwards plus 400, Wiseman plus 600, Cole Anthony plus 400, ain't no stopping. Obi Toppin is also plus 1,400 too. So any of those rookies really stand out to you so far?
I think you hit it on the head with Halliburton. I had heard that he told other teams he only wanted to play for the Kings, which is why he fell down there, which could be the only time in history.
Yeah.
Openly chose
to go to Sacramento.
I'm very excited about it. But yeah, I think in terms of on-court performance, I think he's been the most consistent. I know LaMelo Ball just became the youngest player to get a triple-double. And I mean, he is at negative odds, so he's clearly the favorite to do it. But Rookie of the Year is one of the rare awards where your team doesn't necessarily need to be very good for you to win it. And so I think you could see a guy like Anthony Edwards, just because who knows what's going on in Minnesota. Like they certainly are not showing up very well, especially defensively. They just do not play defense over there. Yeah. So he could be a guy that kind of sneaks in there. Maybe our own The Florist in Chicago could deliver a Rookie of the Year. But I thought before the year Obi Toppin had a really good shot at it too, so I can stick with him. He's the rare senior college grad coming in already very old by NBA standards, but
which is insane.
This means he's NBA ready, so he'll have his solid rookie year and then probably plateau around that same level.
Well, you mentioned the no defense, and that was the knock on him, is that he cannot guard anybody. So we'll see. But so we'll go Obi Toppin and Tyrese Halliburton. Those are our way too early Rookie of the Year picks. So this was your idea. So something I'm super excited to move into here are out of the box NBA expansion cities. So obviously that's been one of the, I guess, major topics, but I guess they really won't be seriously looking at it till about 2022. But with how you mentioned the loss of revenue, trying to bring in these new teams, I believe that it's like 2.5 billion would be the price they're asking to buy in on a new expansion team. So we're looking at out of the box cities here. So not the ones that they're really super considering, but we think that they should. So Seattle, Las Vegas, I've heard are the front runners. Maybe Vancouver again, Pittsburgh, Louisville, something like that. I'm not really sure, but I've got a list of 4. I picked 2 that could be in the West and 2 that could be in the East. I don't know what you got, but I'll let you start us off.
Well, I had 3.
Cool.
So we'll see if we've got some overlap here. And for this, my criteria was mainly, does a professional sports franchise already exist in this city?
Mm-hmm.
And because typically the league is going towards places where there aren't any other sporting teams, or there's one other one.
Mm-hmm.
If there's 2 or 3, it's usually kind of like, I don't know, that's too much competition, which is not a terrible business move. So my first pick, it's going to be my own home city, but I would like to say in North Austin. I live in South Austin, and I don't want to live near this stadium. I think it would be Austin has recently surpassed over 1 million people and is the 11th largest city, going back and forth with San Jose. to make that top 10 there, and maybe in the latest census they'll have passed them, but by all estimates they're still a little bit behind. But a nice metropolis area here. San Antonio is close, but I think you could still have two of those teams and be fine, especially if it's North Austin. That's like with traffic, that's close to 2 hours between that, and then still about 2.5 hours away from Dallas. So you've got a nice gap of fans in between there. But the G League games are always pretty well attended, and they had a championship G League team a couple of years ago. They're still a solid team there, and Texas is a nice little pipeline for basketball too. It's not like, I mean, I guess that's more important for college than professional, but,
right.
But I think also be a fun time, and it's a great city. It's the best city in Texas. Players would want to come here. They'd love the music scene. Let's get Austin as our first entry.
Do you have what you'd call them? Do you have a team name in mind, or just?
So I don't think this would fly as an actual team name, but in the latest NBA 2K, which I believe is 17 that I have, I created an Austin team and I called them the Austin Weird, based off the slogan of Keep Austin Weird. And their logo was a sound wave based on the music, and also because there's only like 20 generic logos you can choose from, and I'm like, I can run with that. We can make that work. So that's my too early team name.
That's awesome, dude. The Austin Weird. I can definitely see that happening, though. You mentioned that, what is there, 3 teams in Texas already, so why not add a 4th? Everything's bigger there anyways. Exactly. So my first one was San Diego. So they've got over 1 million. It's the 8th biggest city in the U.S. The Padres are the only pro team there. They could have a decent following. There's San Diego State. They get a pretty good draw for their basketball team there. There's a lot of great basketball tradition at that school. They already announced that they're building an arena that NBA games could play at. The Clippers used to be there. Obviously, they couldn't bring back the Clippers name, but I don't know. I think San Diego, who wouldn't want to go play a few years in San Diego? It's a great area. It's always nice there. I think they're missing the chart. The city is missing the Chargers. Obviously, this is basketball. It's not the same as football. Pretty much anything to get back Boltman. I don't know if you remember him from the Chargers games that used to dress up like the Charger. But anything to get that guy back in the mix. So San Diego is my pick. I actually made them on the latest 2K, and I was the San Diego Pandas. That was my name. There's a little homage to the San Diego Zoo and Anchorman. So
that's terrific. And I wonder if, I'm sure there's a statute of limitations that is still enacted here, but I wonder if they could name themselves the Chargers. The basketball team, kind of like an FU to the NFL.
Yeah, that would be actually hilarious. The San Diego basketball Chargers. So what's your next city?
Well, San Diego is actually one of my cities as well. So give me another one of yours, since you've got
more. St. Louis. So I'm a Cardinals fan. I know you mentioned the cities with the 2 sports teams that they are kind of going to avoid those, but I have a little bit of an argument. It's definitely a smaller market. The population is just over 300,000, but they could play at the Enterprise Center where the Blues play. I would say that's a pretty NBA ready arena. St. Louis loves the Cardinals and the Blues, but I think they could really get behind a team. Look at what the Battlehawks are able to do in the XFL. I know that's football. It's different, but they led the XFL in attendance. And I think they had 2 or 3 games where they had 30,000 plus fans in the Edwards Jones Dome. And I think what could a brand like the NBA do in that city if the XFL got 30,000 people to pack into a game? So I don't know. I think it would be hard to compete with the Cardinals and the Blues, especially the Cardinals, just because St. Louis is such a baseball city. But there's not really an NBA team around St. Louis. I guess they could be Pelicans fans or Chicago fans, but do people in St. Louis want to cheer for the Bulls? I don't know.
Yeah, St. Louis was the one city where I was like, that's makes sense with 2 teams in there already. And I agree. I think there is a wide enough net that they could catch a ton of different states really for fans, because Southern Illinois is there is an East St. Louis that's in Illinois. They would also be fans. You get a lot of different states for there. I like that pick. My other one is Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
I love me some New England in the fall. I think it's just one of the most picturesque cities. I don't know if most NBA players would care about that, but it's still a nice area to go to. And similarly to St. Louis, like, yeah, there's kind of the Celtics are near there. I guess you could maybe say the Knicks and Nets being like kind of nearby, but you're sort of getting everyone that's in that upper east corner of the United States. You got Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island. All of those people would adopt this Hartford team as their own. Obviously, Hartford being in Connecticut, you've got UConn, the Huskies, as a team that they have rallied around in all different sports, particularly basketball. And I think it's just it'd be nice to get like a Northeast team that I feel like there's a lot of pre-prejudice against the Celtics and Knicks from a lot of people, and to a lesser extent the Nets, I guess, just from people that don't like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving. And I feel like Hartford could be a team where people are like, okay, we can rally around this. We got these guys on our back. So
bring back the Whalers.
Another fun one. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. So I had two more, so I'll just go over them real quickly. My first one was Nashville, another smaller market, just like over 600,000 people. Titans, Predators both have decent fan bases, and then the NBA Ready Arena would be Bridgestone, where the Predators play. I thought that could be kind of interesting, especially with that whole aspect of Broadway or whatever they call it, all those bars and like the music scene there, just the party aspect. I feel like that could be cool with an NBA team there. And then my fourth one was Montreal. So the largest city in Quebec, population of over 1 million, only one other like American professional franchise there with the Canadians, and then they do have the Montreal Alouettes in the CFL. But I don't know. I think they could play at the Bell Center where the Canadians play, have another Canadian rival for the Toronto Raptors. I mean, why not?
Yeah, Montreal is maybe number one on my list of cities I'd love to visit that I haven't been to yet. I was planning to do it in 2020, and then all travel shut down. I think a Canadian city makes more sense from a geographic location than Mexico City is another city that's kind of been thrown around, and that's like so far, even from Texas. That's a far flight, and for other teams, like presumably, maybe you'd move like the Timberwolves to the east or something, but if they're still in the west, Minnesota to Mexico City sounds like the worst flight imaginable, or vice versa is probably even worse if you're going from like nice February Mexico weather to Minnesota snow.
Well, that's what I thought about, like Honolulu or a team in Hawaii too. Then that was my thought. It's like, oh, that travel would be pretty fucking bad for rough, yeah. I mean, either way it would be pretty bad. I feel like obviously it'd be cool to play in Hawaii, but the jet lag, I think it'd just be constant.
It'd be rough, yeah.
So before we close out our little NBA chat here, I'm going to put you on the spot, mix your pop culture and basketball here. Give me your top 3 basketball movies.
Ooh, okay. Top 3 basketball movies. All right. Number 1, I just say that it's not the best movie, but from nostalgia, it's Space Jam. Just from.
Oh my God. We're such, that's my favorite. Yes. I was hoping you'd say that. Number 1 on my list.
Yes, just from growing up in the 90s, Michael Jordan, and also in Chicago, Michael Jordan, obviously a huge part of the Bulls' success. And I watched that movie every day for a month when I was a kid. I just had a friend that was also very into it, and we'd just go to one of our houses after school and watch it for literally every day for a month. And it was insane, but it was great, and I still love it. It's still an enjoyable movie, despite certainly not being, I would even say, a very good movie. I would just say it's like a good movie. It really is. It doesn't put the Looney Tunes in like not in a bad light, but like the Looney Tunes have certainly had better performances than they do in that movie.
Yeah, man, that was like a favorite movie of like all time growing up. Like I had my own Jordan jersey. I still have a Wheaties box of Michael Jordan, like a poster that my girlfriend won't let me put up because she thinks it's scary, like it's creepy because he's smiling and looking at you on the box. But yeah, I used to make my family call me Michael. Like it was bad, man. He was my all-time favorite. Do you have any other 2 that come to mind?
Yes, I have this is I go back and forth on if this is a basketball movie, and it's weird because I don't know if I need to see it again, but I would put Uncut Gems on this list.
Okay.
If only because Kevin Garnett, in a role that only he could play as this, I mean, he's playing himself, but he's like super obsessed with diamonds and just like so passionate about everything. I do think this movie could probably be about 20 minutes shorter than it was. And it's the only movie I can remember going to where people actually left the theater during it. Because there is a lot of yelling and cussing among, with people with New York accents, which certainly that's not for everyone. But I thought it was a really, edge of your seat kind of the whole movie type of film. And I can certainly empathize. I've never bet, tens of thousands of dollars on a game, but even like, a March Madness game where I have maybe a $10 bracket or something, I'm just like on the edge of my seat on pins and needles the whole time. Like, this has to hit. It has to go in.
Losing my shit. Yeah, absolutely.
Empathize with that one. And then I'm trying to think if I should go with an actually like a good movie or another nostalgic one. I'll give Air Bud an honorable mention just because... mainly because of all the other movies that that franchise spawned of him playing soccer and volleyball. And I think the baseball one is my favorite name of Seventh Inning Fetch is a fantastic baseball themed title for a dog. But for an actual movie where there's basketball involved in it, I'll give He Got Game the shout out. Ray Allen, of course, doing a terrific job as Jesus Shuttleworth. I know Blue Chips is a commonly popular one. I'm going to admit I haven't seen it in its entirety. So I that's my homework. I'll see that and then see if I have the updated rankings after that.
Absolutely, man. That's an awesome list. Those are great little basketball conversation here. Nice little NBA chat. So hopefully, we see the Bulls onto better things here. Maybe we squeak in as an 8 seed in the East this year, and then just get our shit wrecked by the Sixers, the Nets, the Celtics, whoever, the Bucks, whoever makes it up there. So we're gonna switch it up.
Can't wait.
Quick little NFL wild card recap, real quick. So we're both Bears fans. We can start there. Super disappointing game. 7-3 at halftime. It really could have been 10-7 Bears if Javon Wims catches that touchdown. In the second half, I think they punted like 5 or 6 times. They had maybe like 50 total yards before that last drive and that meaningless touchdown by Jimmy Graham. So what kind of were your thoughts on the game? I know it was pretty frustrating from a Bears standpoint.
Well, I do have to give a shout out. Jimmy Graham, he went to the University of Miami the same time I was there.
Nice.
And I played basketball for 4 years and only played a season of football. So good on him this is a decade in the NFL now for really just playing 1 year of college football. He also was very nice. I stopped him in a parking lot one time because I needed a quote from a basketball player for a story I was working on for our paper. And I said, "Hey, Jimmy, you got a few minutes?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so we chatted. He's a very nice guy.
That's awesome.
I mean, to hold the Saints to 21 points, that's kind of nice. But yeah, just a very, you hate to look at one play, but that Wims drop, like you said, that's a pretty bad drop.
Yeah.
Pretty bad. I went around him in the end zone, dropped it. And for a team that struggles to score points like the Bears do, unless they're playing the Lions, in which case they're the best team in the league. Even during losses, they're still the best team in the league. But yeah, that was you think, hey, maybe if that happened, changes momentum a little bit. But it was funny. The Saints kind of looked hesitant for a lot of that game, and then they were like, "Hey, Drew Brees, you're still you can still be good at quarterback.
You're
right?"
still alive. Yeah.
And then they had that crazy just march down the field drive, and I was like, okay, this is probably the end. Once it got to 2 scores, I was like, that's probably it.
Yeah, it was just like when that Wims dropped happened, they just kind of it took all the life out of them. They stopped wanting to take shots downfield. Montgomery really wasn't able to get going. And I mean, the Saints are incredibly good. They're the number 4 rush defense in the league. And I mean, and then Anthony Miller punches CJ Gardner-Johnson. What are you doing? Cole Kmet
just loves being punched, apparently.
He's an instigator. And even Matt Nagy said he is they showed him tape. They took time out of practice to show him tape of this guy instigating fights, and Anthony Miller still couldn't help himself. Then Cole Kmet gets called for that personal foul for tossing the ball back to the ref, which it was just ugh. I mean, they made the playoffs at 8-8. What more can you ask for? I didn't expect them to win. But when it was, I don't want to say it was close, because I mean it was close in the first half. Like it was a tight game, and the final score doesn't really reflect that. But I mean, hopefully they make some changes in the offseason. I guess that's really all you can say at this point.
That's all we can hope for, yeah.
Yeah. So if we move on to just a quick recap of the other game. So the Bills had a close call with the Indianapolis Colts to win 27-24. Josh Allen, kind of in the MVP conversation this year, didn't really fully get there, but he had a great year for him. So he finishes with 324 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also led them with 11 carries, 84 yards, and a touchdown. Phil Rivers on the other side wasn't too bad, 309 yards, 2 scores. Jonathan Taylor had 78 yards and a touchdown. It was a defensive battle. I took the over in this game, and it was at 51. Hit exactly 51, so gotta love starting off your wild card weekend with a push. But it was close. Did you have any thoughts on this game?
I mean, I'm glad the Bills eked it out, because I think they're a far more entertaining team to watch than the Colts. And
yeah, absolutely.
Stefon Diggs, who, I mean, we want to talk dark horse MVP candidates. Let's throw Stefon Diggs in there, because he has really transformed Josh Allen into a accurate quarterback, and it's amazing what having a competent number one wide receiver can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I think they're a lot of fun to watch. Josh Allen being one of the masters of the run pass option. They're a fun team, and I'd rather watch them than the Colts run the ball a lot. So and
then Phil Rivers say "dadgummit" and "heavens to Pete" or however he likes to fake curse at people. Next game, the Los Angeles Rams, kind of a surprise, at least for me. 30-20 over the Seattle Seahawks. Russ was 11 for 27, just couldn't get anything going. DK Metcalf was frustrated on the sideline. Jalen Ramsey was really getting into him. The Rams start John Wolford and then didn't tell anybody that Jared Goff was available and going to be their backup. Of course, Wolford gets hurt. Goff comes in. Pretty serviceable. I mean, 30 points is damn good. Aaron Donald, I think, hurt his ribs too. So they have guys dropping like flies. They're the number 1 defense in the NFL. They go to Green Bay next week. Fuck the Packers. I just have to sneak that one in. Do you see them as a threat to the Packers going forward?
I mean, no, but I mean, they got that playoff experience from their Super Bowl run a couple years ago. I know people always want to say that. I guess the Packers are always in the playoffs too, so it's not really that much of a difference. But my biggest takeaway from this Rams Seahawks game was the Rams got a pick 6, and DK Metcalf didn't chase down the defender. It seemed like he started a lot closer than
he was. It was a lot closer this time.
He just didn't do it. When he runs, I'm like, this man can catch anything. It's just the combination of how huge he is and how long his strides are. And I was shocked that he did not chase down from behind. So
I think he had less field to catch him. That's probably what it was.
Just you're gonna score. It's fine.
Absolutely. So move on to Tampa Bay and the Washington football team. The Taylor Heineke game. That's what we'll call this. 306 yards, a touchdown. He had 6 carries for 46 yards and a touchdown. Have they found their quarterback, or do they still try to go draft somebody this year? That's the question. Also, with Doug Peterson's firing, Ron Rivera is now the longest tenured head coach in the NFC East at 1 year and 10 days, which is absolutely insane. Tom Brady, he does it again. I figured he wasn't going to go out like he did last year. There's no way. 381 yards, 2 touchdowns. Leonard Fournette is somehow good again, 19 carries for 93 yards. He just kind of came out of nowhere, especially when Ronald Jones was hurt and some time. And then, talk about adding AB, but they already have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. It's like pick your poison really for the Bucs. They're a team that I think teams in the NFC should be scared of for sure if they get hot. And then Washington, I mean, good on them they covered the spread. They were close with a guy that they didn't think was going to be starting until probably a few days before the game. And it's looking up for the 7-9 football team. I think next year they've got a real chance to make some noise, especially with those. I mean, you're talking about 4 first-round picks on their defensive line, the number 2 pass defense in the NFL, which was number 2. I think they're like the number 2 pass defense in the NFL, number 32 pass offense in the NFL. Like something really disparaging like that. But any thoughts from this game? I mean, it wasn't really surprising to me that the Buccaneers won.
No, I was only surprised that Washington was. I mean, they had a chance to go down and tie the game at the end of things. And I think you're spot on with the Bucs being a dangerous team. I think they've gotten hot at the right time. And I mean, I don't like Tom Brady, but I usually don't doubt him in the playoffs. So I think they can make a bit of noise.
Yeah, you and everybody else. That's a pretty long list that you just mentioned there. So if we're talking about feeling dangerous, Baker Mayfield must have woke up feeling dangerous. The Browns get their first playoff win since 1994, 26 years. That's older than me. I'm 25. That's insane. So the Browns 48-37. They jump out to a 28-0 lead. You get that picture of Big Ben crying on the sideline. Maybe he's done. He threw for like 500 yards. I think he had like the record for most completions in a playoff game, but they turned the ball over 5 times. They started the year 11-0. They finished 12-5. That's not great. That's not great.
Less than ideal. Yeah.
Are they the worst 11-0 team ever?
They might be. Yeah. I'm hard pressed to name a worse.
I off the top of my head, I definitely couldn't tell you. But did you have any thoughts on this game? I was, the Browns missing their head coach Kevin Stefanski, several other staff members. They had a couple players out due to contact tracing. I said before the game they should just cheat, like get Stefanski on Zoom or like have him texting in the plays or something. Like what's the NFL like really gonna do?
Yeah, I mean I don't know why we didn't have like a live feed of him from the basement. Like at least
right.
He can't call plays. Like he's not sick. He's following protocols. So I was a little disappointed they didn't have like a Kevin calling in from his basement or wherever he was.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the Steelers started the game with a terrible snap that goes into the end zone and the Browns jump on it. And it kind of went from there. I'm super happy for the Browns and Browns fans.
Me too.
I think like it's been so long for them. I mean, obviously, like you said, longer than you've been alive.
Yeah.
They last one playoff game. And I have a couple friends who grew up in the Ohio area, are big, or in the Cleveland area and are big Browns fans. And one's fiance was documenting he was like weeping as they had won. He was still nervous, like even when they were up multiple scores with like under a minute left. She's like, I'm not comfortable. I'm like, you have the ball, you're literally just kneeling the rest of the game, you'll be okay. He's like, no, like things can go wrong. And so I'm excited for that. But I think they're a fun team to watch. And I think both of the AFC games this weekend are going to be a very entertaining, even for casual fans. There'll be a lot of scoring in both.
I think it's going to be awesome. But yeah, I always root for those underdog stories. And I follow some Browns fans on Twitter and it's 28-0. And they're like, everybody calm down. Like we have 1-0 yet. You've obviously never watched a Browns game before. So, and I mean, it wasn't really ever close. The Steelers definitely made it like a game, but I mean, good for the Browns, just really a dominant performance. They were able to run the ball really well. Baker Mayfield showed a lot of poise, especially not having, his head coach there. Now it's the question, are they better without Stefanski?
He should come back. Don't practice.
Yeah, just nothing.
Don't have your head coach and don't punt. That's the Mike Tomlin lesson.
Yeah.
Like 4th and 1 from like the 50.
What are you doing? You're down 2.
Got all the momentum. There's 8 minutes left. We're down 2 scores. Let's punt.
Analytics, baby. So the last game we'll hit on, and then we'll close this out. one of the better games of the weekend, maybe the best, one of the most exciting, the Ravens and the Titans, 20-13, super low scoring. Lamar Jackson gets that elusive playoff win that he hasn't been able to get yet. We saw Marcus Peters interception and some dancing on the Titans logo as a response to what the Titans did in Baltimore a few weeks ago. But I thought this was awesome. I was rooting for the Ravens. I hate the narrative on Lamar that he's not a good quarterback, whatever, because I think he's obviously that has quieted down a lot since his MP season. And, he's really, I feel like, to me, looks a lot better in the pocket. He looks a lot more comfortable throwing the ball. But then he's also like, he can literally run whenever he wants. Like he over 1,000 yards rushing this year, just almost unstoppable. And my questions going into this game were, okay, what do the Ravens do defensively to stop Derrick Henry? But then the Titans can't stop anybody on defense. So I think the Ravens can just go wild. And then, did you see Patrick Ricard is like over 300 pounds and running the ball? Like, what? He's an absolute unit. But I don't know. Those are my initial thoughts. Like, not really anything super deep. Good for the Ravens. They get it out they stick it out 20-13. But do you have any takeaways or anything from this game?
I mean, love seeing a big man with a football.
Yeah.
Always a joy. But yeah, I think with Lamar Jackson, like he does seem like he's one of the most hated players in the NFL, and I really don't understand why. Like, by all accounts, he seems like a great guy. I think it is just that, like, his style of play is so different from things we've seen, and maybe some bitter fantasy owners that he runs all over their teams. But I like, to me, I was like, he kind of solidified this against the Browns on that Monday night game when he literally left the field. They said cramping. It was definitely, he had to go take a poop.
He had to. We talked about it on this podcast. Yeah, he had to take a shit. He
comes back out on fourth down, throws a touchdown pass, and I'm like, that's making you relatable. I love it. I'm in.
The poop game. That was one of the my favorite nights on Twitter, I think, ever, because that's all anybody was talking about. And then you see the security cam footage that, of course, they cut to right away of him running down the tunnel, waddling. He's pushing people out of the way. It's I gotta go. And he's like, no, man,
get out of the way.
No, man, I wasn't pooping. And then it's just, I saw so many tweets the game's gone. But Lamar Jackson is in a stall in the locker room right now. It's oh man, but that was awesome.
Everyone poops. It's fine.
Do you have a team that you're picking as your Super Bowl champion through the first wild card weekend?
I actually don't. I don't have one. I think I'm just every time I'm like, I want this team to win. They usually don't.
Yeah.
And I would say for most, I mean, outside of the Packers, obviously, but I don't think I probably wouldn't be happy if Tampa Bay won. So the NFC roster is getting limited. Let's go Rams. I don't know. Yeah, let's just say someone from the AFC. I'd be fine with any AFC team winning. NFC, less excited about, but I won't get too crushed.
Yeah, I'm gonna be rooting for the Bills and the Browns. Just, I want those two teams that just haven't, had that playoff success. Feel what that's like, especially for Bills Mafia. Go jump through some tables and burn some shit or whatever. Whatever
more than tables, if they make the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Well, it's Cleveland. There were probably babies made last night. They were so happy. Like you said, your buddy's weeping. I can't imagine what certain other Cleveland fans are doing, man. But this has been awesome. We did our NFL wildcard talk. We did our NBA talk. We did our out-of-the-box expansion cities. So Joey Held, the editor, the creator of Chris Bounce Pass, a basketball newsletter. So if you, at heart, you're covering, it's a basketball newsletter at heart, you're not covering news and scores. Instead, you'll find cool info on players, forgotten games, fun facts, branding, case studies, and basketball and pop culture served to you with the precision of a crisp bounce pass. So is there anything specific you want to plug or tell us where we can find the newsletter, your website, or any social media or anything like that at all?
Yeah, you can hit up the website at crispbouncepass.com and follow me on Twitter at Joseph Currency. I love hearing, Twitter is such a cesspool sometimes, but it's there's so many great stories and things like that too. And you can always send suggestions for Chris Bounce Pass too. I love hearing all the ins and outs of wacky NBA, the whole wacky NBA world. So looking forward to chatting on there.
Absolutely, man. Well, I cannot thank you enough for joining me. This was awesome. I'm so excited that we were able to connect through Facebook. It's absolutely incredible what you're able to do on the internet, who you're able to meet. So looking forward to this. I'll be posting this episode later tonight. So I'll be watching the national championship game and trying to get this out. And then we'll get this posted, post some video clips throughout the week, do some promo, and then we'll have to have you back on. Let's do maybe a little bit later in the NBA season, get a little update and keep this collaboration going, man. I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Andy. It was a blast.
Absolutely, Joey. I had a great time. Ladies and gentlemen, Joey Held, editor, crispbouncepass.com. Go check them out. Subscribe to the newsletter. Awesome stuff. Basketball and pop culture blending extremely well there. Like I said, one of my favorite articles was the one about Curb and Muggsy Bogues. All right, we are out of here. Episode 47 of the Brew Party Podcast. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere you get your podcasts. We're there. Subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/the Brew Party. Make sure you turn on those notifications as well. All right, we're out of here. I'm done rambling.
Swish.